Dragon Ball Super is officially returning to TV after almost 8 years, adapting a fan-favorite saga and remaking its divisive first season. Welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. Now, before we dive into the newly announced Dragon Ball projects and what's next for the franchise, first, let's talk about why the series was on hiatus for so long.
I've been waiting my whole life for this.
The Dragon Ball Super anime ended its initial run on March 25th, 2018. The show had a rough start due to a rushed production schedule, resulting in notoriously poor animation. And interest in the series quickly dropped because the first two story arcs were retellings of existing Dragon Ball Z movies, Battle of the Gods and Resurrection F. But as Super went on to tell new stories, audiences gradually warmed up to the series. The ratings eventually peaked with the final arc of the series, the Universe Survival Saga. Now by then, Dragon Ball Super had become massively popular. The reveal of Goku's new Ultra Instinct transformation generated so much hype that it crashed Crunchyroll and other streaming services. This created the running joke that Dragon Ball Super broke the internet. And for the final few episodes of the series, there were even government-sponsored public watch parties throughout various Latin American cities. It got so out of hand that Toei Animation and the Japanese Embassy of Mexico issued formal complaints of copyright infringement. That's right, the battle between Goku and Jiren caused a real-life international dispute.
You serious?
With the Tournament of Power storyline concluding on a high note, Dragon Ball Super ended after 131 episodes. However, the series still continued in two other forms, the manga and the sequel movies. The first film, released 8 months after the series finale, was titled Dragon Ball Super Broly. This story was a reimagining of the 1997 Dragon Ball movie Broly, the Legendary Super Saiyan. The original Dragon Ball movies were mostly side stories with little to no involvement from the series creator Akira Toriyama. So this new film introduced the character of Broly into the mainline Dragon Ball continuity.
But Broly? Call me Kakarot.
The success of this film led to the sequel released in 2022 titled Dragon Ball Super Superhero.
Person, you said super twice.
Yeah, funny story. When Toriyama chose the superhero subtitle, he had completely forgotten that the series was called Dragon Ball Super. He tended to forget a lot of things.
What a useless transformation. You've changed your hair, so what?
Anyway, Superhero shook up the series formula by having a fan-favorite character, Piccolo, as the protagonist. We follow him and Gohan as they battle the remnants of the villainous Red Ribbon Army. The only problem is that Gohan severely slacked off in his training.
You weren't thinking I'd gone soft, were you?
By the way, Doug, you always have fun resolutions. What's your New Year's resolution this year?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'd like to eat more.
Well, a lot of people do have oral fixation habits they want to correct. In fact, a lot of people spend January always telling themselves, this is finally my year, I'm gonna quit. But then that hand-to-mouth habit kicks in and then you just start back up again. And that is what makes Fume so genius. This is a flavored air device that helps you break that bad oral habit. It has no nicotine, no batteries, no vapor, just simple flavored air in these cores that you can take anywhere. See, Fume is a quitting solution that works. That's why we've been working with Fume for years and they're the sponsor of this video. So I've been talking about this on the channel for a long time. I have various mental disorders that make me prone to addictive behavior and nervous habits, like squishing my face or biting my lip, etc. But now, instead of giving into that craving, I started using Fume. It gives me something to reach for, it has a fidget-friendly design, and it looks really cool. The Journey Pack also has a variety of different flavor cores. My new favorite is the limited time only gingerbread. Now, I'm telling you all this because Fume has a special January-only offer. In January, every flavor core you order is doubled. Buy 1 pack, you get 2. Order 4, you get 8. Plus, you get a free gift when you use my code ScreenCrush. But this double core offer ends on January 31st, so jump on it now and don't wait. Head to tryfume.com, that's TRYFUM.com, and use my code ScreenCrush to claim your double cores and your free Fume topper before this New Year's offer closes for good. You'll be helping out our channel and doing yourself a favor in the new year. Now, back to what I was saying. Now, regarding the Dragon Ball Super manga, it gets a little more complicated. Most anime are direct adaptations of an existing manga series, just like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. But with Super, the anime and manga were telling the same story simultaneously until the manga eventually fell behind. This is because Akira Toriyama would write outlines for each arc and then give them to Toei Animation and his protege, Toyotaro, who drew the manga. From there, it was up to each of them how they wanted to fill in the blanks of those stories. Now, even though the anime and the manga had the same plot structure, certain events played out very differently in the two versions. Fast forward to March 2018, and it makes perfect sense for Dragon Ball Super to end with the end of the Tournament of Power arc. With the anime concluded, Toyotaro was free to continue the manga on his own terms. Then he wrote 3 new story arcs: the Galactic Control Prisoner Saga, the Granola the Survivor Saga, and the Superhero Saga, which was an expanded retelling of the superhero movie.
Why didn't he retell the Broly movie?
Honestly, we don't know for sure. By the time the manga caught up to the anime, the Broly movie was still a month away from release, and Toyotaro probably wanted to move on to new content right away. Although the manga does acknowledge Broly's place in the timeline. Plus, the retelling of Superhero adds some pretty cool new events to the story. This includes a mini arc starring Goten and Trunks that harkens back to Gohan's high school days in Dragon Ball Z.
Great Saiyaman at your service!
As the manga continued, fans assumed that the anime would return and adapt these new story arcs. However, when a new anime was eventually announced, it wasn't what anyone expected. Dragon Ball Daima premiered in October 24, several months before Toriyama's tragic passing in May of that year, making it the final series that he worked on. In this story, Goku and his friends have been turned back into children by the Demon King, Goma.
They turned back into kids? Is this show just Dragon Ball GT again?
Well, yes and no. Series producer Akio Ioku confirmed that Daima was a show primarily intended for fans who grew up with GT. Now, while Daima does stand out from its predecessor due to its unique setting of the Demon Realm and its fun new characters, it's still pretty obvious that Toriyama took significant inspiration from GT, particularly in its premise and lighter tone. Daima even reintroduces Goku's Super Saiyan 4 transformation, which was previously exclusive to GT.
Seems like you made out well at the Super Saiyan bargain sale.
Now, Daima received overall high praise from fans, but it also has its fair share of detractors. Many began to notice a pattern with Dragon Ball's recent anime projects: a reliance on nostalgia. While the reintroduction of forgotten characters and plot points has been fun to see, you can only do it so many times before it begins to feel a little stale. And some of these story beats feel like cheap imitations of what came before, such as Gohan's Beast transformation and Superhero. This scene was cool enough on its own, but it doesn't hold a candle to Gohan's Super Saiyan 2 transformation that inspired it. And I'm not saying that Daima and the Super movies didn't do anything original, but there were still unadapted story arcs in the manga that had fun new ideas that we hadn't seen before, and it left fans wondering,
What's the holdup?
It turns out the main reason for the delay was a lengthy legal case behind the scenes. So here's the TLDR of the situation. Shueisha, a Japanese publishing company, holds the rights to the Dragon Ball franchise. But in 2023, the former head of their Dragon Ball division, Akio Iyayuki, defected from the company and formed his own, called Capsule Corporation Tokyo. Since then, both organizations have been battling it out over the rights to the Dragon Ball IP, and it only got worse with Toriyama's passing. The problem with this was that Capsule Corp handled the anime and video game rights, while Shueisha handled the manga rights. This meant that any new project couldn't use story elements from the manga that hadn't already been adapted. And when this news became public, most people lost hope that Dragon Ball Super would return anytime soon. However, our prayers have finally been answered. A live event was held for Dragon Ball's 40th anniversary, and it featured major announcements about the series' future. The biggest one being that Dragon Ball Super is returning with 2 new anime series. So let's start off with the first project, Dragon Ball Super: The Galactic Patrol. Now, this is an adaptation of the manga's Galactic Patrol Prisoner Saga, otherwise known as the Moro arc. Now, the trailer for this sequel series doesn't reveal much about the new story arc, but there are some important details that we want to break down. The trailer opens with a slideshow of panels from the 2014 prequel manga, Dragon Ball Minus. Now, this story would later be adapted as the opening scene of Dragon Ball Super: Broly. Minus follows the story of Goku's parents, Bardock and Guinea. Bardock senses the impending doom of their homeworld, planet Vegeta, at the hands of their dictator, Frieza. So Bardock steals a space pod and sends young Goku to planet Earth, hoping to save him from the genocide of the Saiyan race.
Wait, so Goku's Superman?
Well, yes, but actually, no. This wasn't even Bardock's original story. The character first appeared in the 1990 television special Bardock, the Father of Goku, and this version of Bardock was very different. Instead of being a caring father, he abandoned his son because he was born weak, and Goku wasn't sent to Earth to be saved from death, he was sent there to wipe out all humans. If you ask me, that's actually a much more interesting story. But that version of Bardock seemed to have been retconned away. And as this trailer emphasizes, Dragon Ball Minus is here to stay. The trailer then cuts to a beautifully animated montage of Toriyama's artwork from the original Dragon Ball manga. It makes you wonder what a remake of the classic series could look like. And side note, the orchestral score for this trailer was made by the legendary film composer Hans Zimmer, known for films like Inception, The Lion King, and Interstellar. I mean, how awesome is that? We then get a brand new animated sequence of Goku cycling through his Super Saiyan and Ultra Instinct transformation. This is followed by a still image of Goku and Vegeta sporting the Galactic Patrol on their iconic outfits. And then there's something about these sequences that really makes them stand out: their art style. Ever since Dragon Ball Super ended its initial run, every animated project since then has used a wildly different art direction from what came before. Dragon Ball Super Broly used thick line art and simple coloring. Dragon Ball Super Superhero used cel-shaded 3D animation. Dragon Ball Daima used a style that replicated Toriyama's art in its later years. And the sequences in this trailer feel like a faithful adaptation of Toyotaro's unique art style, especially in its harsher coloring. Now, I know this new season is very early into production, but if this is what the Galactic Patrol saga is going to look like, then we are here for it. Toyotaro wrote and drew that story arc in the manga all by himself, with little involvement from Toriyama. So this story really is his creation and should be treated as such. After all, with Toriyama's passing, the future of Dragon Ball Super's story is in Toyotaro's hands. Anyways, we don't want to spoil anything major, but I will give you a brief idea about what you can expect from this saga. Picking up right where the Tournament of Power left off, Goku and Vegeta are recruited by the Galactic Patrol. This is the organization of space cops that Jaco belongs to. Their mission is to apprehend Moro, the Planet Eater, who has escaped from galactic prison. But with Moro's magical abilities, he may prove too much for our heroes to handle. So Goku and Vegeta must train with new allies and push themselves to the limits of their power to save the universe. Guys, this arc is awesome. Moro is a terrifying antagonist and arguably the most unique villain in all of Dragon Ball Super. This story introduces plenty of new characters and locations that deepen the series' lore. Vegeta is given a fantastic character arc that builds on his development from the previous sagas. And best of all, nearly every fighter in the main cast is well utilized. Even Yamcha gets a chance to shine, and God knows he needs it.
At some point, they are going to ask me to join the team for the tournament, right? I mean, surely they have to want me there.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll get around to it.
And with the confirmation that the Galactic Patrol saga is getting an anime adaptation, it's safe to assume that the Granola arc will be adapted too. And if the anime staff is legally allowed to use those stories, hopefully the video game staff will be as well. At this point, it's still unclear if Shueisha and Capsule Corp reached some kind of agreement, but things are certainly looking more promising. Now, I want to talk about the second anime series that was announced, Dragon Ball Super Beerus, which will premiere this fall. This is a remake of Dragon Ball Super's first story arc, the God of Destruction Beerus Saga.
But wait, that saga was a remake of the Battle of the Gods movie. That's a remake of a remake.
Yep, that's the weird part. The 2013 release of Dragon Ball Z Battle of the Gods was a huge deal for the series. It was the first theatrical Dragon Ball movie in 17 years, and the first to be written by Akira Toriyama. It essentially revived the series after the manga ended in 1995. It then received a sequel, Resurrection F, in 2015. But only 2 months after that, Dragon Ball Super premiered and would spend its first 27 episodes retelling the events of those movies. And, as I mentioned earlier, this rush production was a recipe for disaster. The poor pacing and unfinished animation tanked the series' reputation. The consensus among the fanbase became to just watch the two movies and skip Super's first 2 seasons. But with Super's expanded content in the story arcs, it was clearly intended to be the definitive edition. So with this rocky history, I can understand why they're remaking Battle of Gods again. The only way to get more people to watch the early episodes of Super is to fix their problems, and that's exactly what they're doing. And this wouldn't be the first time a Dragon Ball series would get an abridged re-release. Dragon Ball Z's Kai, a recut, remastered version of Dragon Ball Z, cut the number of episodes from 291 to 167, and it seems like the Beerus remake will follow in Kai's example with only 6 episodes instead of the original 15, meaning the story should have a much tighter pacing akin to the Battle of the Gods movie. And as we can see from this trailer, the new version will completely overhaul the visuals. This includes re-rendering existing scenes and adding completely new cuts of animation, especially for Goku and Beerus' battle. And while I wouldn't call this remake necessary since the Battle of the Gods movie still exists, it has a decent chance of being the definitive edition of the saga.
Yeah, 3 times the charm, I guess.
Well, there's still no word if the other Dragon Ball Super arcs will receive a similar overhaul, but I'm pretty confident that the Resurrection F saga will also be remade. That second season has the exact same production problems as the first and is arguably worse.
You can all go to hell without me!
Although I do have one theory about the Beerus remake, one that could change the course of the whole series. I think they might use this new version of the story to make Dragon Ball Daima canon.
Daima was written by Toriyama. How's that not canon?
Well, Daima has multiple plot points that make it inconsistent with Super. First, the Supreme Kai and Kibito were unfused by the beginning of Daima, but in Super, despite taking place later in the timeline, the two of them are still fused. Second, Daima has Goku transform into Super Saiyan 4, despite him saying at the beginning of Super that he has no transformations above Super Saiyan 3. Now, I know that Daima was intended to just be a fun side story without Super's baggage. However, this remake has the opportunity to fully integrate Daima into the main story and make the timeline a lot less confusing. Alternatively, the remake could add manga exclusive content to make it more in line with Toyotoro's vision of the series. We'll just have to see. Either way, the next couple of years are looking very promising for the Dragon Ball franchise, and while the series may still be somewhat stuck in its past, at least we finally have a bright future to look forward to. Well guys, that's just our thoughts on the return of Dragon Ball Super. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below or find us on our free to join Discord server, and big shout out to Ethan Lavinsky who wrote this video. You can find his links below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.